The soldier had been in dozens of small towns, clearing alleys and walking empty streets with his K9 partner, Shadow. But he'd never experienced this, a woman running from across the street, her breath visible in the cool air, tears already streaming down her face. She dropped to her knees, wrapped her arms around Shadow's neck, and whispered, "You found me again." Shadow stayed still, tail giving one slow wag. The soldier froze, every instinct telling him this woman knew his dog. But Shadow had never seen her before in his life. The air in the small town carried a faint chill, the kind that hinted at rain later in the afternoon. Sergeant Daniel Cole adjusted the strap of his gear as he and Shadow made their way down Main Street. The place was quiet, too quiet for the middle of the day. A few old pickups were parked along the curb, and the smell of brewing coffee drifted faintly from a diner whose neon sign flickered just above the entrance. Shadow padded beside him, tail relaxed but head moving in slow arcs, scanning the environment the way only a trained K9 could. His black coat gleamed under the muted sunlight, ears twitching with every distant sound, the slam of a screen door somewhere behind them, the hum of an approaching truck in the distance. Cole had been through towns like this before. Small, out-of-the-way places where everyone knew everyone, and strangers stood out like sore thumbs. Their assignment here wasn't complicated: check in with the sheriff, walk the streets, keep a presence while another team swept the surrounding backroads for a missing teenager. The town was supposed to be safe, the kind of place people came to get away from trouble. They were halfway down the block when it happened. From across the street, a figure emerged from between two old brick buildings, a young woman, maybe mid-20s, moving fast. Her jacket was too thin for the weather, her hair loose and whipping around her face. At first Cole thought she was just crossing toward the diner in a hurry. But then she locked eyes on Shadow. The change in her was instant. Her walk turned into a sprint, her arms lifting slightly as if she was reaching for something she'd thought she'd never see again. Cole slowed, instinctively shifting his stance, one hand near his belt. Shadow noticed too, his pace slowed, his head tilting slightly, eyes fixed on her approach. She didn't slow down until she was right in front of them. And then, without hesitation, she dropped to her knees on the cracked sidewalk and threw her arms around Shadow's neck. "You found me again," she breathed, her voice breaking. Shadow didn't pull away. He stood still, tail giving one slow, measured wag, head lowering slightly to meet her embrace. His eyes were calm, unblinking. Cole froze. In all the time he'd worked with Shadow, he'd seen plenty of people greet the dog, some with awe, some with fear, some with curiosity. But never like this. Never with that combination of relief and heartbreak. "I knew you would," the woman whispered into Shadow's fur, her voice muffled. Cole cleared his throat, his tone even. "Ma'am, do we know you?" She didn't look up right away, just tightened her grip on the dog. "Of course you do. He saved me." Cole's brow furrowed. "When?" Her head lifted slowly, and he saw her face clearly for the first time. There was no recognition in her eyes for him, only for Shadow. Her cheeks were damp, her breath quick and uneven. "It was years ago," she said. I was lost. And he came. Right here in this town." Cole glanced at Shadow, who was still watching her calmly. The thing was, Shadow had never been to this town before. Cole was certain of it. Their patrol routes didn't include this part of the state, and Shadow had only been his partner for 3 years. "You must be mistaken," Cole said carefully. "Shadow's never." She cut him off, shaking her head. "I'm not wrong. I'd know him anywhere. The eyes, the way he sits, even the scar on his ear." Cole's gaze shifted to Shadow's left ear. There was, in fact, a faint nick in the furred edge, an old injury from before the dog had been paired with him. It was something Cole never thought much about, just another mark from Shadow's years of service before they met. "How do you know about that?" Cole asked. She swallowed, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled back enough to look at the dog's face. Because I touched it. That night. Cole's training told him not to dismiss people out of hand, especially not in small towns where stories had roots deeper than outsiders could see. But he also knew facts. And the fact was, Shadow had no record of working this area. "What's your name?" Cole asked. "Emily," she said softly. "All right, Emily. Why don't we step inside somewhere and talk?" Her eyes darted to the quiet street around them, then back to Cole. "Not here." "He'll see." Cole's muscles tightened. "Who?" Emily glanced over her shoulder, scanning the rooftops and alleyways like someone expecting to spot a shadow moving. "I don't know his name. But if he finds out you're here, with him," she gestured toward Shadow. "He'll come." Before Cole could press her for details, the diner door across the street opened. A man in his 60s stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag, his gaze settling on them immediately. The second he saw Emily, his expression darkened. Emily froze. Cole noticed the subtle shift in her posture, the same one he'd seen in witnesses who'd spotted someone they'd been hiding from. The man stood on the diner steps, his eyes moving from her to Shadow, and then finally to Cole. His jaw clenched. "Emily," he called, his voice carrying easily across the street. "Come on inside." She shook her head. "No." Cole stepped forward slightly, keeping himself between the man and Emily. "Do you know him?" Her answer was a whisper. "Too well." The man's eyes flicked to Shadow again, and for the briefest moment, Cole saw something there, not surprise, not recognition, but a flash of calculation. And that was when Cole knew this was going to be more than just a mistaken identity. "Open." The man in the diner doorway stayed where he was, rag still in his hands, watching. His eyes never left them, and something in the way he stood told Cole he wasn't just curious, he was gauging, weighing, deciding. Shadow didn't growl, but his body angled slightly toward the man, ears forward, nostrils twitching like he was catching a scent he didn't trust. Emily's grip on the dog loosened just enough for her to glance over her shoulder again. "Please," she whispered, "not here." "He's watching." Cole kept his tone calm, as if this were just another friendly street conversation. "All right, Emily. Is there somewhere nearby you feel safe?" She hesitated. "The library. Down 2 blocks, near the old post office." "He won't go in there." "Why not?" Her eyes flicked back to the diner doorway. "Because she works there." Cole didn't ask who she was, not yet. He knew when a witness was hanging by a thread and when to let them lead the conversation. He gave a short nod. "All right. Let's go." Emily rose slowly, her knees stiff from crouching on the sidewalk. She kept one hand on Shadow's neck as if letting go might break some invisible tether between them. Shadow didn't resist, if anything, his posture suggested he was aware she needed the contact. They moved in a loose formation, Emily on Shadow's left, Cole on the right, his eyes scanning windows, rooftops, and alley mouths as they went. Behind them, the man from the diner stepped down onto the sidewalk. He didn't follow, but Cole could feel his stare boring into their backs. The library wasn't much, a brick building with faded white trim and a wooden ramp added sometime in the last 20 years. A hand-painted sign in the window read "Open" in cheerful letters. Emily quickened her pace, opening the door without looking back. Inside, the air was warmer, carrying the smell of paper and old wood polish. Shelves stood in neat rows, and a woman in her 70s sat behind a counter near the front, adjusting her glasses as she looked up. "Emily," she said in a tone that was part relief, part concern. "I thought you weren't coming in today." "I wasn't," Emily replied, still holding on to Shadow. But something happened. The older woman's gaze shifted to Cole, taking in his uniform, the gear, and finally the dog. "You're not from here," she said plainly. "Just passing through," Cole answered. "We needed a place to talk." She studied him for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Use the reading room in the back." No one will bother you there. The reading room was really just a small space with a few mismatched chairs and a heavy oak table. Sunlight came in through a high window, casting a pale rectangle of light across the floor. Emily sat down immediately, shadow settling at her feet without being told. Cole stayed standing, leaning slightly against the table. You said Shadow saved you, Cole began. When? Emily's hands twisted together in her lap. It was years ago. I was 16. My mom had just left. I went walking, out past the mill, where the old tracks are. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. She paused, glancing down at Shadow. It was getting dark. I heard footsteps behind me, but when I turned, I couldn't see anyone. Then I heard them again, faster. And that's when he came, this dog. Black, just like him. Same eyes. Same scar on the ear. He ran up beside me and stood between me and whoever was there. Cole listened without interrupting. I never saw who it was, Emily continued. I just heard them stop. Then they walked away. The dog stayed with me the whole walk back to town. When I got to the corner near the diner, he just left. Like he knew his job was done. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Cole crouched beside Shadow, running his fingers along the dog's left ear. The scar was small but unmistakable. Emily, how sure are you this was the same dog? She met his gaze. I know it was. You don't forget something like that. Dogs don't live forever, Cole said gently. Shadow's not old enough to have been here when you were 16. And he's been in service since he was a pup. Her brows knit together. Then how? Cole didn't answer. He'd learned that some mysteries unraveled only when you had all the pieces. Do you remember anything else? Smells, sounds, anything? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. When he stood next to me, I smelled smoke. Not cigarette smoke, wood smoke, like from a fire. And I heard a bell. Just one chime, really deep. I thought maybe it was from the old church by the river, but it didn't sound right. Cole filed it away. And the man at the diner, what's his connection? Emily's shoulders tensed. He's been here forever. Owns the place. Always, watching. Not just me, everyone. But the night I was followed, I swear I saw him watching from across the street when I got back. That was years ago, Cole pointed out. Some people never change, she said quietly. Shadow's ears flicked suddenly toward the door to the reading room. A faint creak of the floor outside followed. Cole stood, moving silently to the wall beside the door. He waited, listening. The sound of retreating footsteps, slow, deliberate, drifted away down the hall. Cole glanced at Emily. Anyone else supposed to be here right now? She shook her head. He stepped into the hall, scanning left and right. The shelves were empty of patrons. The older woman at the counter was still there, flipping through a ledger. She looked up, brows lifting slightly as if nothing was wrong. Back in the reading room, Emily had shifted in her seat, one hand on Shadow's back. He knows I'm here now, she said, her voice barely audible. Cole didn't ask how she knew. Some instincts were too sharp to dismiss. Cole stayed by the table, one hand resting lightly on the back of a chair, his eyes on Emily but his ears tuned to the faint creaks and shifting air in the library. Years of patrol work had sharpened his ability to tell the difference between normal building noises and footsteps trying not to be heard. Shadow was the confirmation he needed. The dog had shifted his body so he was no longer lying fully at Emily's feet. His head was up, ears forward, eyes fixed on the door, the muscles in his shoulders tense. His tail was still, his breathing shallow but steady, the posture of a dog holding himself in check until given a command. Emily noticed it too. Her fingers curled tighter into the fabric of her jeans, and she leaned slightly toward Shadow as if his presence was the only thing keeping her grounded. It's him, she whispered. Cole kept his voice low, steady. You're sure? I told you, I can feel it. He's not just curious. He doesn't want me talking to you. Cole's gaze shifted toward the door. Stay with Shadow. He moved toward the hallway, his steps silent over the worn carpet. The main section of the library was quiet. The older woman at the counter was still there, but she wasn't looking at him anymore, she was looking at the front windows. Cole followed her gaze. Outside, a shadow passed across the glass. Someone was walking slowly past, their shape distorted by the old pane. Cole crossed to the front door and stepped outside. The street was empty. The low hum of an idling truck came from somewhere down the block, but no one was in immediate sight. He scanned the rooftops, the alley beside the library, and the far side of the street. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and wood smoke. Then he saw it, a reflection in the diner window across the street. The older man from earlier was sitting at the counter, turned slightly toward the glass. His coffee mug was untouched. His eyes were on the library. Cole went back inside without lingering. He didn't need to make a scene, not yet. But the man knew where they were, and from the way he sat, he was waiting. When Cole returned to the reading room, Emily was standing now, one hand gripping the back of the chair, the other resting lightly on Shadow's shoulder. Well, she asked. Street's empty, Cole said. He didn't mention the diner window, not until he knew more about the older man's role in all this. Emily didn't relax. If he's not outside, he's got someone else watching. Cole studied her for a moment. You said this happened years ago. Why now? Her voice was flat. Because I came back. Shadow's ears twitched at the word back. Cole knelt beside the dog, brushing a hand over his collar. Why did you come back? Emily glanced toward the window, as if weighing whether to answer. My mom died last month. I needed to see this place again. To see if what happened really happened. And? Cole prompted. She looked at Shadow. It did. The older woman's voice carried faintly from the front desk. Emily? Could you give me a hand with something? Emily's brow furrowed. Now? Please, the woman called again, a little louder. Cole didn't like it. Stay here, he said quietly. Shadow will stay with you. He stepped out into the hallway and moved toward the front counter. The older woman was bent behind the desk, rummaging in a drawer. She straightened when she saw him. I'm sorry, I thought she was with you. She is, Cole said. What did you need? The woman hesitated, glancing at the door. There was a man outside a minute ago. Not from here. He was looking in. Cole's shoulders tightened. What did he look like? Tall, younger than you, maybe 30s. Wearing a gray jacket. But he didn't come in. Cole glanced toward the door. The glass reflected only the quiet street now. When he returned to the reading room, Emily was still standing, but Shadow was no longer looking at the door. He was staring at the high window, his ears locked forward, his eyes tracking something outside. Cole followed his gaze. The window was too high to see through clearly from the ground, but a faint shadow passed across it, blotting out the light for a heartbeat before moving on. Emily's voice was barely audible. They're circling. Cole's mind started mapping exits. The library had 2 doors, the main entrance and a service door in the back hallway. The latter was a straight shot to an alley that fed into the street behind Main. He moved to the window and checked the frame. Old wood, single pane, not much of a barrier if someone wanted in. Emily, he said, we're leaving. Now. She didn't argue. She stepped beside Shadow, her hand finding the fur along his back again. The dog stood instantly, body shifting into that alert, ready posture that always preceded movement. Cole led them to the back hallway, his eyes sweeping the shelves for any sign of movement. They passed the older woman, who gave them a tight, knowing nod but didn't say a word. The service door creaked when he pushed it open, letting in a gust of cool air that carried the scent of rain and something else, the faint, lingering smell of wood smoke. Emily froze in the doorway. "That's the smell," she whispered. Cole looked down the alley. Empty. But the smell was stronger now, clinging to the damp air. "Go," he said, motioning for her to move. Shadow stepped out first, scanning left and right before settling on a slow, deliberate pace down the alley. Cole followed, his hand near his sidearm. They were halfway to the street when a figure stepped out from behind a dumpster at the alley's mouth, tall, wearing a gray jacket. His eyes landed on Emily first, then Shadow, and his expression shifted in a way Cole didn't like. "I've been looking for you," the man said. The man in the gray jacket didn't move from the mouth of the alley. His hands were loose at his sides, but the way he stood, weight slightly forward, chin angled down, told Cole he was ready to step in fast if he wanted to. The air between them was heavy, layered with the faint smell of rain-soaked asphalt and that same lingering hint of wood smoke Emily had recognized. Shadow shifted his weight forward, body low, ears pinned slightly back in anticipation. The dog's tail was still, his focus absolute. Cole knew he could close the gap in a second if given the order. "You've got 2 seconds to step aside," Cole said, his voice even but carrying. The man's gaze flicked to Shadow, then back to Cole. "It's him," he said quietly, like he was speaking more to himself than anyone else. Cole kept his stance steady. "You know this dog?" The man's eyes narrowed. "Not like you do." Emily took a step closer to Shadow, her hand gripping the fur at the base of his neck. "Don't let him near me," she whispered. The man heard her, and something about his expression shifted, not anger, but recognition. "You remember," he said to her. "Good." Cole's voice sharpened. "Step aside." The man didn't flinch. "You think he's yours now? That's the problem." Shadow's growl started low in his chest, vibrating through the damp air. Cole could feel the tension building, not just in the dog, but in himself. The man wasn't here to make small talk. "What do you want?" Cole asked. The man tilted his head slightly. "It's not about what I want. It's about what's coming. And you're standing in the way." Cole's grip on his sidearm tightened, but he didn't draw yet. "Coming from where?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he shifted his gaze down the alley toward the street behind him, like he was waiting for something. Cole stepped forward half a pace, enough to send the message that he wasn't giving ground. "Last warning." The man's eyes flicked to Emily again. "If you think you can keep her safe, you don't know what you're up against." Shadow barked once, loud, sharp, and close enough to make the man take an involuntary step back. That was all Cole needed. "Move," Cole ordered. This time, the man stepped aside, slow and deliberate, never taking his eyes off them. "You'll see me again," he said as they passed. Cole didn't respond. He kept Emily on his left, Shadow on his right, and walked them out of the alley onto the side street. The rain smell was stronger now, a cold edge in the air hinting at a downpour before long. Once they were clear of the alley, Emily exhaled shakily. "He's not the one from before," she said, "but he knows." "Knows what?" Cole asked. She shook her head. "I can't, not out here." They cut across the side street and into a narrower residential lane lined with older houses. Most of the windows were shut, curtains drawn despite the daylight. Cole kept them moving until they reached a small park with a gazebo in the center, open enough that no one could approach without being seen. They stepped under the gazebo's wooden roof, the smell of damp wood surrounding them. Shadow lay down at Emily's feet, still alert, eyes scanning the perimeter. "All right," Cole said, keeping his voice calm but firm. "What exactly does he know?" Emily hesitated, glancing toward a pair of kids playing in the distance before lowering her voice. "About the night I was followed. About the dog that saved me. And about the fact that dog," she reached down, her hand trembling slightly as she rested it on Shadow's head. Wasn't supposed to be real. Cole frowned. You're going to have to explain that. I don't know how to explain it, she said. I was 16. It was dark. I was alone. And then he was just there. No collar, no handler. He led me out, stayed with me until I got to town, and then disappeared. No one saw him but me. And when I described him later, people told me there hadn't been a black shepherd here in years. Cole considered this. So you think Shadow is the same dog? I know he is, she said. Even if that doesn't make sense. Cole glanced at Shadow. The dog was watching a sedan crawl past on the street, tail flicking once before going still again. Dogs don't just reappear years later unchanged. Emily's voice dropped to almost nothing. Unless he was never just a dog. Before Cole could respond, Shadow's head snapped toward the park entrance. A man was standing there, not the one in the gray jacket, not the diner owner. This one was younger, clean-shaven, wearing a dark coat. His hands were in his pockets, but his stance radiated intent. Emily's hand tightened on Shadow again. I've never seen him before, she murmured, but he's here for me. The man started walking toward the gazebo. His pace was unhurried, his eyes fixed on them the entire time. Cole stepped forward, his tone sharp. Can I help you? The man didn't answer until he was close enough that his voice didn't have to carry far. I'm here for the girl, he said simply. That's not happening, Cole replied. The man's eyes slid briefly to Shadow. He's not yours. Shadow growled, the sound deep and steady. Cole's stance shifted, weight evenly distributed, ready for whatever came next. The man stopped at the edge of the gazebo steps, looking at Emily with something that wasn't quite curiosity, more like recognition. You're not supposed to remember him, he said. Emily's voice trembled. Too late. Block 4 visual prompt. A cinematic, realistic image of a small-town park with a wooden gazebo under gray skies. Inside, the soldier stands protectively in front of a young woman, while a full black German Shepherd K9 lies at her feet, alert and watchful. At the gazebo steps, a clean-shaven man in a dark coat stands with his hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on them. The atmosphere is tense, with the muted light of an overcast afternoon. Do you want me to move straight into Block 5, where the confrontation with the man in the dark coat escalates and we get our first hint of his connection to Shadow? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Alright, here's Block 5 of 10, exactly 1,000 words, as the tension with the man in the dark coat escalates and the mystery of his connection to Shadow starts to surface. The man in the dark coat didn't blink as he stood at the gazebo's steps. His voice had been calm when he'd spoken, but there was something underneath it, a weight that made Emily shift closer to Shadow without even realizing she'd moved. Shadow stayed low at her feet, head forward, eyes locked on the man, his muscles tight but not quivering. He wasn't agitated the way he would be with someone random approaching. This was something else, recognition, maybe. Cole's tone stayed measured. You've got one chance to walk away. The man's gaze flicked to him, almost like Cole was an afterthought. I'm not here for you. Then you're already in the wrong place, Cole said. The man's lips curled into something between a smirk and a grimace. You think you know what's standing next to you. But you don't. His eyes dropped to Shadow again. You were never his handler. Cole took a slow step forward, putting himself between the man and both Emily and the dog. That's where you're wrong. Shadow is mine now, and no one touches him without going through me first. The man tilted his head, studying Cole's face like he was searching for a crack in his resolve. I'm not here to take him. Not yet. I'm here to take her. He nodded toward Emily. You're not taking anyone, Cole said, his voice flat. Emily's breathing picked up, but her hand never left Shadow's fur. I don't know you, she said. And you don't get to decide where I go. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. You don't remember the deal, do you? Emily froze. What deal? Exactly, the man said softly. And that's why you're not safe with him. He pointed at Cole without looking away from Emily. Cole kept his stance solid, his voice calm but edged. You're going to tell me what you think you know. And you're going to do it now. The man's gaze flicked briefly toward the street. Not here. Too many eyes. I don't care where you want to do it, Cole said. If you've got something to say, you can say it in front of me, in front of her, and in front of my dog. For the first time, a shadow of frustration crossed the man's face. You think you're protecting her. But you're not. You're delaying what's coming. A drop of cold rain landed on the gazebo railing, darkening the wood. Another followed, and then another, until the faint patter of a light shower filled the air. The man didn't move. Cole could feel the shift in shadow before it happened, the slight lift of his head, the deeper pull of air through his nose. The dog's tail stiffened, and his eyes darted toward the park's far side. Cole followed his gaze. A figure was standing there in the rain, too far to see clearly, but close enough to make out the posture. Upright. Still. Watching. The man in the dark coat noticed too. His expression tightened. He's early. Who's early? Cole asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he took a slow step backward down the gazebo steps. Get her out of town, soldier. If you can. Cole moved to follow, but the man lifted one hand, not in threat, but in warning. Next time, he won't be alone. Then he turned and walked toward the street, disappearing behind a line of parked cars. Cole stood there for a moment, scanning the far side of the park. The figure in the rain was still there, but as soon as the man in the coat vanished, they turned and walked away without a sound. Emily's voice was low. I told you. It's not just him. Cole turned back to her. What deal was he talking about? Her brow furrowed, her voice shaky. I don't know. I swear I don't. But if he thinks I made one, maybe it was with, she trailed off, her eyes dropping to shadow. With him. Cole crouched beside the dog. Shadow, look at me. The canine's eyes met his, steady and calm. But there was something there, a flicker Cole couldn't name. He's a working dog, Cole said quietly, almost to himself. I know his history. Emily's voice came sharper than he expected. Do you? Or do you just know what you were told? The rain picked up, pattering harder on the gazebo roof. Cole's mind ran through everything he knew about Shadow, the transfer paperwork, the medical records, the handler logs. There were gaps, he realized. Entire months unaccounted for in the early years. Emily stepped closer. If he's the same dog from that night, then maybe he doesn't just find people. Maybe he's looking for something else. Cole stood, scanning the park perimeter again. The streets were quiet, the figure in the rain gone. But the unease clung to him like the damp air. He looked at Emily. We need to move. Where? She asked. Somewhere no one knows we're going, he said. They left the park through a side path, Shadow leading the way, his head low, tail steady. The rain softened the sounds of their footsteps, but Cole kept glancing behind them, checking rooftops, windows, the mouths of alleys. When they reached the edge of town, the air changed, fresher, with the scent of wet grass and open fields. Cole turned down a narrow lane that led toward a cluster of abandoned farm buildings he'd noticed earlier. As they approached, Shadow slowed, his ears swiveling. Cole scanned the empty structures, peeling paint, sagging roofs, and weeds climbing through broken fences. He chose a long, low barn and stepped inside, the smell of dust and rain-soaked wood meeting him. Emily followed, still keeping one hand on Shadow. Why here? She asked. Because if anyone's tracking us, They'll expect us to head for somewhere safe. Not here. They moved deeper inside, away from the open doorway. Cole scanned the rafters, the corners, the shadows between hay bales long since left to rot. Nothing moved. Shadow sat at last, his breathing steady but alert. His gaze flicked between Cole and Emily, then toward the far end of the barn. Emily followed his look, her voice dropping. He knows something's coming. Cole didn't doubt it. The barn smelled of rain-soaked wood, rust, and the faint tang of old oil from tools that hadn't been touched in years. Shafts of gray light cut through warped slats in the siding, casting uneven bars across the dirt floor. The roof above creaked with each gust of wind. Cole closed the barn doors until they were almost shut, leaving a sliver to keep an eye on the lane outside. Emily stayed near the center of the space with Shadow, her hand still resting lightly on his back as if letting go might break whatever strange connection she felt. Shadow's posture wasn't one of a dog simply resting. His head was up, ears swiveling in small, controlled movements. Every now and then, his nose lifted, drawing in slow breaths through the damp air, cataloging every scent the way only a trained canine could. But there was something else, an awareness in his eyes that Cole couldn't shake. Cole stepped over to a workbench along the far wall, brushing aside a layer of dust. If we're going to be here a while, we'll need to know the exits. He pointed to a narrow ladder leading to a loft. Stay here, he told Emily. The loft was little more than a hayloft without hay, just old planks and a broken window that looked out toward the back field. Cole scanned the horizon, open pasture, then a line of trees about 200 yards out. No movement. When he came back down, Emily was crouched beside Shadow, whispering something to him. She stopped when she saw Cole watching. What were you saying? He asked. Her expression was guarded. Nothing important. Just remembering. Remembering what? The night I told you about, she said quietly. When the other one, or him, or whatever, found me. He stood just like this. Same tilt to his head, same way his tail moved slow like he was thinking. Cole frowned. Dogs don't think like that. Emily's voice sharpened. Then you tell me what this is. She gestured toward Shadow. The dog's eyes were fixed on the far end of the barn now, his breathing shallow, his ears trained forward. Cole followed his gaze. There was a stack of wooden pallets leaning against the wall, and behind them, the faint outline of a smaller service door. Something back there? Cole asked. Shadow didn't move, didn't bark, but his stillness was an answer in itself. Cole walked slowly toward the pallets, boots crunching on grit. He glanced back at Emily. Stay with him. When he reached the service door, he found the latch rusted half open. The wind made it tap gently against the frame. He nudged it open an inch and peered outside. Nothing, just the overgrown edge of the property, grass bent under the drizzle. He started to close it again when he caught it, faint footprints in the mud just beyond the threshold. Not shoe prints. Bare feet. Small ones. Cole scanned the field again, but the rain was washing the edges of the tracks away. Whoever left them couldn't have been here long. He returned to the center of the barn. Emily, you ever see kids hanging around out here? Her face went pale. No. Why? There were tracks. Bare feet. Small. Someone's been watching this place. She glanced down at Shadow, whose gaze hadn't moved from that corner of the barn. Or watching him. Cole was about to respond when a faint metallic sound echoed from outside, the creak of the front barn doors shifting just slightly. He moved quickly to the gap he'd left and looked out. The lane was empty. The drizzle blurred the edges of the road, but there was no figure, no movement. Still, something had pushed the door. Shadow was on his feet now, silent but alert, his eyes not on the front doors but on the loft above. Cole followed his gaze upward. Nothing moved, but the old boards overhead groaned with a weight they hadn't a moment ago. Emily's voice was a whisper. Someone's up there. Cole didn't waste time. Back against the wall, he told her. He drew his sidearm, moving toward the ladder with measured steps. Shadow followed, his claws clicking softly against the wood. Cole reached the base of the ladder, listening. The sound above was gone now, replaced by the faint patter of rain on the broken loft window. He climbed halfway up, enough to get his eyes level with the loft floor. At first, it looked empty. Then, from the shadows in the far corner, a small shape shifted, a child, maybe 10 years old, barefoot, clothes damp from the rain. Their eyes were wide, but not in fear. They were fixed on Shadow below. The boy, Cole could see now it was a boy, tilted his head slightly, mirroring the dog's posture exactly. Cole kept his voice low. You hurt? The boy didn't answer. His eyes flicked to Emily, then back to Shadow. Do you know him? Cole asked. The boy nodded once. Emily's breath caught. How? The boy finally spoke, his voice quiet but certain. Because he found me too. Cole's grip on the ladder tightened. When? The boy's eyes didn't leave Shadow. Before you. Shadow didn't move, didn't make a sound, but the tip of his tail gave one slow, deliberate sway. Cole climbed the rest of the way into the loft, moving slowly so as not to startle the boy. What's your name? Liam, the boy said. Cole crouched a few feet away. Liam, how long have you been here? The boy shrugged. Since it started raining. What started? Cole asked. The boy glanced toward the broken window. They're looking for him again. Emily's voice floated up from below. Who's looking? The boy's eyes shifted to her. The same ones who found me the first time. The ones he brought me back from. He pointed at Shadow. Cole felt the weight of the words settle into the quiet of the barn. Brought you back from where? The boy hesitated, then shook his head. You wouldn't believe me. Try me, Cole said. Liam's gaze went back to Shadow. Wherever he goes when he's not here. Cole stayed crouched in the loft, careful not to spook the boy. Liam's eyes hadn't moved from Shadow below, and Shadow, just as still, kept his gaze fixed on Liam. It was the kind of mutual recognition Cole had seen between two old soldiers who didn't need words to understand each other. You said, Cole began, keeping his tone low, that he brought you back from somewhere. Where was that? Liam's head tilted a fraction, his small hands rubbing at his damp knees. It wasn't here, he said simply. Cole kept his voice patient. Not here how? The boy's eyes flicked to Emily for a second, then back to Shadow. It's quieter there. Cold. Everything's gray. And you can't hear the wind, but you can hear them. Emily's voice from below was soft. Them? The ones looking for him, Liam said, nodding toward Shadow. Cole studied him. How did you get there? The boy hesitated, then said, I got lost. In the woods behind my uncle's house. I thought I knew the path, but I didn't. I walked for a long time, and it got dark. Not night dark, darker than that. I tried to turn back, but the trees didn't look the same anymore. He glanced down at Shadow. That's when he found me. Just came out of nowhere. He didn't bark, didn't run. He just stood in front of me until I started walking again. Every time I went the wrong way, he'd block me. After a while, we came to a fence I'd never seen before. When I climbed over, I was back in my uncle's yard. But when I turned around, he was gone. Cole let the boy's words settle. When was this? Liam frowned, thinking. 2 summers ago. Emily exchanged a glance with Cole. She was the first to say it. That's impossible. Cole didn't answer. He was doing the math. 2 summers ago, Shadow had been with him, on base, accounted for. At least, that's what the logs said. Liam, Cole said slowly, are you sure it was him? The boy's face was calm, certain. Same eyes. Same scar. Down below, Emily crouched to run her hand gently along the edge of Shadow's left ear. The scar, she murmured. That's what I remembered too. Shadow's gaze shifted between them, his tail giving one slow sway before going still again. Cole forced his mind back to the practical. Liam, why come here? Why not stay home? They're close again, the boy said. I could feel it when the rain started. So I came to find him. Emily's voice was tight. To protect you? Liam shook his head. To protect him. That landed heavier than Cole expected. From what? The boy looked toward the broken loft window. From them taking him back. Cole was about to press when Shadow's ears snapped forward, his head turning toward the barn's main doors. His body went rigid, and a low growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Cole climbed down from the loft quickly. Emily, get behind the workbench. She obeyed without question, pulling Liam down from the loft with her. The boy moved easily, never taking his eyes off Shadow. The growl deepened. Cole stepped to the barn doors, peering through the sliver he'd left earlier. The drizzle had thickened into steady rain, blurring the lane, but a figure was walking toward them, slow and steady. It wasn't the man in the gray jacket. It wasn't the one in the dark coat. This one was taller, broad-shouldered, wearing a hooded rain slicker that hid most of his face. Cole? Emily's voice was barely above the sound of the rain. Stay low, Cole said. The figure stopped just short of the barn doors. For a moment, there was no movement, just the rain dripping from the edge of the hood. Then, in a voice low but carrying clearly through the wood, the man said, You've got something that belongs to us. Shadow's growl cut him off before Cole could answer. The K9 had moved to the gap, teeth bared, his stance ready. You can't keep him, the man said calmly. Not forever. Cole's hand tightened on his sidearm. You'd better explain yourself. The hooded figure tilted his head slightly. He wasn't bred for you. He was made for us. And every time he goes back, it gets harder for him to return here. Emily's whisper came sharp. Goes back where? The man didn't answer her. We can take him now, and you can walk away. Or you can make this harder than it needs to be. Cole stepped closer to the door. If you want him, you're going to have to come through me. And trust me, that's not a good idea. A pause. Then the hooded figure said, You're already out of time. The man stepped back into the rain, turning toward the lane. Cole kept his eyes on him until the gray blur of the downpour swallowed him completely. Shadow's growl didn't stop. It shifted, from the direction of the doors to the far wall of the barn, where the service door stood slightly ajar again. Cole moved fast, crossing the barn in long strides. He yanked the door open, just in time to see movement vanish into the field beyond. Emily's voice trembled. They're trying to surround us. Cole shut the door and slid the rusted latch into place. Not if we move first. Shadow was still on alert, his breathing quick and shallow. Cole crouched to meet his eyes. You know where to go? The dog's gaze held his for a long second, then he turned toward the loft ladder and looked back once. Emily caught it too. He wants us to follow. Cole didn't like being led without knowing where, but at this point, Shadow was their best chance at staying ahead. All right, he said, we follow. Block 7 visual prompt. A cinematic, realistic image inside a dim, rain-soaked barn. The soldier crouches near a full black German Shepherd K9, who is standing alert and facing the partially open barn doors. Through the narrow gap, a hooded figure in a rain slicker stands in the downpour, unmoving. In the loft above, a barefoot boy peers down, while a young woman watches tensely from behind a workbench. Light filters through warped wooden slats, rain visible outside. Do you want me to move straight into Block 8, where Shadow leads them to somewhere unexpected, a place tied to both Emily and Liam's past encounters with him? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Alright, here's Block 8 of 10, exactly 1,000 words, where Shadow leads them somewhere unexpected that ties into both Emily and Liam's past encounters. Shadow didn't wait for a command. The moment Cole nodded, the K9 padded toward the loft ladder, moving with purpose but not urgency, like he knew exactly where they needed to go and how much time they had. Cole let him lead, keeping Emily and Liam close. The rain outside was louder now, drumming against the barn roof and spilling through the gaps in the warped siding. Cole climbed up first to check the loft. The space was still empty except for the broken window at the far end. Through it, the rain blurred the view of the back field, but Cole could make out the darker line of a tree break beyond. Shadow was already at the window, his nose lifted into the damp air, ears swiveling. You want us to go out there? Cole asked quietly. Shadow didn't move, just kept staring at the tree-line. Emily's voice floated up from the ladder. That's where I saw him last time. Cole looked back. Who? The dog, she said. When I was 16. That's where he came from, out of that tree-line. I remember because it was raining then too. Liam's head appeared next to hers, his small hands gripping the loft rail. That's where I saw him, too. Just before he found me in the woods. Cole glanced between them, then back at the dog. Shadow's stillness was almost uncanny. He didn't break his gaze until Cole stepped forward and pushed the window open wider. A gust of wet wind filled the loft, carrying that same faint scent of wood smoke. Cole made the call. We're moving. Emily, you stay between me and Liam. Shadow leads. The drop from the loft wasn't far. Shadow took it easily, landing silently on the damp earth outside. Cole helped Emily and Liam through before lowering himself down last. The rain had soaked the ground into a slick layer of mud, but Shadow moved with steady confidence, nose to the wind, tail level. Cole scanned the open field as they crossed, nothing but rain-smeared grass ahead, the tree-line drawing closer with each step. When they reached the first line of trees, the world changed. The sound of the rain softened under the canopy, replaced by the steady drip of water from leaves to earth. The air smelled richer here, wet soil, moss, and something faintly metallic beneath it all. Shadow slowed, pausing at a narrow path overgrown with weeds. He looked back once at Cole, then stepped onto it. Emily spoke quietly. It's the same path. I know it is. You sure? Cole asked. Yes. I remember the way the branches bent in over it. I thought it looked like a tunnel. Liam nodded. That's what I saw too. It felt like it was pulling me in. Cole kept his eyes moving, checking the edges of the path for movement. All right. Stay close. They followed the dog's single file, the rain above becoming a distant murmur. The deeper they went, the darker it became, though it wasn't from the sky, it was the way the trees grew tighter, leaning toward each other until their branches nearly touched overhead. After about 200 yards, Shadow stopped. Ahead, the path widened into a small clearing, its center marked by something unexpected, a stone archway, weathered and moss-covered, standing alone in the middle of the space. Cole felt Emily stiffen beside him. That wasn't here before, she said. It was, Liam countered. You just didn't see it last time. Cole scanned the clearing. The archway was tall enough for a person to walk through, but it didn't connect to any wall or structure. Beyond it, the forest looked the same, yet somehow different, as if the air beyond the arch was thicker, the light dimmer. Shadow walked straight to it, stopping just short of passing through. He sat down, eyes fixed on the space within the arch. Cole approached carefully. What is this? Emily shook her head. I've never seen anything like it. Not here. Liam's voice was quiet. That's where he took me from. That's where they want to take him back to. Cole studied the boy. Who's they? Liam's gaze flicked toward the trees. The ones who talk in the gray place. Cole didn't like the way the air felt here, heavier, like the damp pressed closer to the skin. We're not going through there, he said firmly. Emily looked at Shadow. But that's why he brought us here. Isn't it? Shadow stood again, took one step toward the arch, then looked back at Cole. Before Cole could respond, a sound broke the stillness, faint at first, then growing clearer. Footsteps. Not from behind them, but from beyond the arch. Emily's breath caught. Someone's coming. Cole drew his sidearm, stepping between Shadow and the arch. Stay behind me. Through the dim space in the archway, a shape began to form, tall, human, but indistinct, like it was moving through a heavy mist. The air temperature dropped a few degrees, the damp turning almost cold. The figure stepped closer until its features sharpened. It was the man in the dark coat, the one from the gazebo. His hair was damp, but his expression was unchanged, calm, deliberate. You found it, he said. His voice didn't echo, but it seemed to carry just the same. That's good. Now let him through. Cole didn't lower his weapon. Not happening. The man stepped to the very edge of the archway. His eyes moved from Cole to Emily, then to Liam, before settling on Shadow. You can't keep him here forever. Every time he stays too long, it costs him more to return. Emily spoke before Cole could. Return where? The man's gaze softened, almost pitying. Where he belongs. Where he's always belonged. Shadow didn't move, but his ears twitched, and his breathing deepened. Cole felt an unwelcome thought flicker in his mind, the possibility that the man wasn't lying. The rain outside the clearing slowed, the drops less frequent, as if the world itself were holding its breath. You can walk away now, the man said quietly. Or you can follow him and see for yourself. Cole didn't blink, his sights still locked on the man framed in the archway. The rain-damp air felt heavier here, pressing against his shoulders and the back of his neck. He kept his stance steady, but the quiet was unnerving, the kind of silence where even the forest seemed to hold still. The man in the dark coat stepped one pace closer, though his boots didn't cross the invisible threshold of the arch. You felt it, he said, his voice low and deliberate. The moments when he's somewhere else. Cole's grip on his sidearm didn't falter. Shadow doesn't go anywhere without me. The man tilted his head slightly, his gaze fixed on the dog. You've been with him for what, 3 years? And in that time, how many unexplained disappearances? How many gaps in his logs? How many times did you turn around and realize he wasn't beside you for just long enough to wonder where he'd gone? Cole didn't answer. He had noticed the odd moments, brief absences during long patrols, minutes he couldn't account for. They'd never been long enough to cause concern, but long enough to leave questions he'd pushed aside. Emily stepped forward half a pace, her voice tense. If he goes with you, does he come back? The man's eyes shifted to her. He always comes back. That's the point. But each time it's harder. Each time he stays here longer, the door closes a little more. Liam's voice broke the stillness from behind Emily. It's true. Cole glanced at the boy. You've seen this? Liam nodded slowly. When he found me, he kept looking over his shoulder, like he knew the way out was closing. We barely made it through before, he trailed off, glancing toward the arch, before they got there. They? Cole pressed. Liam's jaw tightened. The ones who wanted to stay with them forever. The man in the coat took another step forward. They're patient. They wait. But they won't wait forever. If you care about him, you'll let him go now, before they take him. Cole's instinct was to reject the whole premise. Shadow was his partner, his responsibility, his dog. But as he looked down, Shadow wasn't watching the man. He was staring into the space beyond the arch, ears slightly back, tail low, body forward like he was leaning toward a pull only he could feel. Emily noticed it too. "He wants to go," she whispered. Cole knelt beside the K9, his voice low enough for only the dog to hear. "You know what's on the other side?" Shadow didn't move, but his breathing slowed. He turned his head just enough to meet Cole's eyes, then back to the arch. It was as close to an answer as Cole had ever gotten from him. The man's voice cut in. "You can come too. See what he sees. Understand why he comes back, different." Cole didn't like the word different. "What happens if I do?" The man's expression didn't change. "You'll learn the truth. But it's not without risk." Emily shook her head sharply. "This sounds like a trap." The man glanced at her. "If I wanted to take him, I wouldn't have waited for you to find me here. I'm giving you the choice. He'll go either way, now or later, when you're not watching." The canopy above shifted in the wind, and the smell of wood smoke grew stronger, drifting through the clearing. Liam stiffened, glancing toward the trees. "They're close." Cole's eyes flicked to the boy. "Who's close?" Liam pointed to the far side of the clearing. "The ones from before." Emily turned. The tree-line was darker there, movement flickering between the trunks, pale shapes shifting just out of focus. The man in the coat looked at Cole. "You can fight them here, lose him, and never know why. Or you can follow him and come back with the truth." Cole's heart was hammering, but his voice was steady. "If I go, they stay," he said, motioning to Emily and Liam. The man nodded once. "They won't follow. Not unless you bring them." Cole looked at Shadow again. The dog was still facing the arch, still holding himself like he was waiting for permission. In all their years together, Cole had never seen him hesitate to move when given an order. Now, he was waiting. Emily stepped closer. "Don't let him go alone." Cole hesitated, long enough for the movement in the trees to grow clearer. Figures were emerging now, slow and deliberate. They weren't running, weren't charging, they were closing in. Shadow let out a low bark, just one, deep and sharp. Cole made the decision. "All right," he said, lowering his weapon but not holstering it. "We go together." The man in the coat stepped back into the archway, leaving space. "Then stay close to him. And whatever happens, don't let go." Cole placed his hand on Shadow's harness. "Stay with me," he said quietly. Shadow stepped forward, crossing the threshold. The moment his paw touched the space inside the arch, the air changed, colder, heavier, and strangely silent. Cole followed without looking back. For a split second, it felt like stepping into water, resistance against his skin, the muffled quality of sound, the faint shift in pressure. Then the world on the other side came into focus. The light was dimmer here, the air thick with fog. Shapes moved in the distance, slow and purposeful, their outlines blurred. The ground underfoot was the same path they'd left, but drained of color, every leaf and branch a shade of gray. The man in the coat turned to face him. "Welcome to where he's been." Cole glanced at Shadow. The dog's eyes were locked on the distant shapes, muscles taut, but he wasn't afraid. Emily and Liam were gone from view. The arch behind them was still there, but it seemed farther away than it should have been. Cole's grip on the harness tightened. "How do we get back?" The man's answer was simple. "Follow him. But not too slowly." Because behind them, the shapes in the fog were starting to move faster. The fog closed in around them almost immediately, muting every sound until even the crunch of Cole's boots on the path seemed swallowed by the air. The grayness wasn't just a lack of color, it was as if the world itself had been drained, every leaf, branch, and stone reduced to shades between ash and silver. Even the man in the coat seemed muted here, his dark clothing now a flat, charcoal tone. Shadow moved with certainty, nose low but tail straight, his paws silent against the damp ground. Cole kept his hand on the harness, matching his stride to the dog's. He didn't know why, but he felt if he lost contact, he'd lose more than just his partner, he'd lose his way back entirely. Behind them, the pale shapes were more defined now. They moved on two legs, tall but thin, with proportions that seemed just slightly wrong, arms too long, steps too smooth. They didn't run, but their steady pace was closing the distance. Cole kept his voice low. "Where are they?" The man in the coat glanced back briefly. "They're the reason he's needed here. The reason he's pulled back through when something's wrong on your side. They look like..." "They're not people," the man cut in. "Not anymore." The fog shifted with the faintest breeze, and for a moment, Cole thought he saw eyes among the shapes, faint, glimmering, fixed on Shadow. The dog's pace quickened. Cole followed without question as the path curved, the air growing even colder. The smell of damp earth was tinged now with something faintly metallic, the same scent Cole had noticed in the barn. They reached a break in the trees, if they could still be called trees here. Their trunks were warped, bending away from the path as if repelled by something ahead. And in that opening stood another archway, this one darker, almost black, the stone slick with condensation. Beyond it, Cole could see a flicker of color, the first he'd seen since stepping through. "That's your way back," the man said. "But you can't just run through." Cole didn't take his eyes off the pale shapes as they closed in. "Why not?" "They'll follow if you don't stop them." Cole's mind was already moving through options. "How?" The man's gaze went to Shadow. "He knows. But it will cost him." Cole crouched, meeting Shadow's eyes. "You're not doing this alone," he said. The dog didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, placing himself between Cole and the advancing shapes. His posture changed, ears forward, tail high, body squared to face them. He didn't growl, didn't bark, but the air around him seemed to tense, as if even the fog was holding back. The pale shapes slowed. Cole felt something then, not sound, not movement, but a weight pressing outward from where Shadow stood, like an invisible barrier. The shapes shifted, their smooth steps faltering for the first time. The man in the coat's voice was quiet but urgent. "Go now." Cole hesitated. "Not without him. He'll follow. But if you wait, they'll push through." Cole backed toward the black archway, never taking his eyes off Shadow. The dog stayed where he was, holding the line. When Cole reached the threshold, the pale shapes began to press again, their movements quickening. Shadow took one step back, then another, but not toward the arch. He was drawing them away, deeper into the fog. Cole's stomach twisted. "Shadow." The dog looked back once, just long enough for Cole to see something in his eyes, not fear, not farewell, but a steady, unshaken intent. Then he turned and moved into the mist. The man in the coat stepped beside Cole. "If you go after him now, you won't find your way back." Cole's jaw clenched. "And if I don't?" "He'll come when it's safe. Like he always does." The pale shapes had vanished into the fog where Shadow had gone, their glimmering eyes the last thing to fade. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight easing. Cole stepped through the black arch. The shift was immediate, sound rushed back in, the smell of wet leaves and rain filling his lungs. The color returned to the world in a blink. He stumbled forward into the same clearing they'd left, Emily and Liam waiting just beyond the stone arch. Emily's eyes went wide. "Where is he?" Cole didn't answer right away. He turned back toward the archway, but it was different now. The space within was filled with nothing but the same forest beyond, no trace of fog or the gray place. Liam's voice was quiet. He stayed to keep them from following. Emily's hand went to her mouth. "Will he?" "He will," Cole said, though the certainty in his voice didn't match the tightness in his chest. The rain had eased to a soft drizzle. They stood there in the clearing for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than minutes. Then, without sound or warning, Shadow stepped out from between the trees opposite the arch. His coat was damp, his breathing steady, and in his eyes was that same calm recognition. Emily let out a shaky laugh. Liam smiled faintly. Cole crouched as Shadow trotted up, resting one hand against the dog's neck. "Good to have you back," he said quietly. Shadow leaned into the touch for just a moment before stepping past him, placing himself between the group and the archway. He sat, watching it like he was waiting for something else to emerge. But nothing did. Cole rose, glancing at the man in the coat, only to find the spot where he'd stood was empty. The forest was silent again, save for the patter of rain on leaves. Whatever had happened beyond that arch, whatever Shadow had faced in the gray place, was already fading into something that might one day feel like a half-remembered dream. But Cole knew it hadn't been a dream. And when Shadow's ears flicked toward the sound of the wind shifting, Cole understood, the door might be closed for now, but it wouldn't stay closed forever.